Well, hello again, and welcome to our seventh webinar. This time we are talking about the importance of communication of science, not only in bioarchaeology, but in general, using social media as tool. We all know how important become the social media in everyday's life. So we are here with Roberto, and I would like to, before we even start, I would like if you can tell us a little bit about your path, because I think it's really curious. And also, I think it's a lot of people ask like, oh, I'm not archaeologist, or I'm not biologist. How can I get into bioarchaeology? Is there any way? So I think your example could be really inspiring.
Thanks, Natasha, and hi everyone. And for what concerns my path into osteology and bioarchaeology, that will be the first part of my presentation. So I have some slides about
Okay.
that. I will tell who I am, why I'm here, talking in a webinar by Aita Bioarch. And so if you want to follow me, please, we are starting with the communication of science of bioarchaeology in the social media era. As Natasha said, we are not just going to focus on bioarchaeology, but in general, we're going to focus on my experience with science communication. It's not a long experience. I'm not here to teach anything to you. I'm just here to discuss some aspects of science communication with you, and we're going to touch the aspect of science communication in general, not just only focusing on bioarchaeology. So, hi everyone again. I'm glad to see some familiar names among the participants. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And let's start with a trigger warning. This will be the beginning and the conclusion of our presentation, trigger warnings and the display of human remains, because of course we're going to talk about bioarchaeology. Since you know Aita Bioarch, you probably already know the social media that Aita Bioarch uses for conveying information, for engaging people into its work. You are also familiar with the display of human remains. But if you're not, or if you think you're too sensitive to the display of human remains, please know that in this presentation we are gonna show some archaeological human remains. So let's start with who am I? Who's Roberto? I chose these 5 pictures to tell my story because in a way or another, these pictures are connected to all the phases of my formation in the scientific world. First of all, I studied biotechnology. So I am a biotechnologist. I graduated in Milano University. And as you know, biotechnology has nothing to do with bioarchaeology. The only thing they have in common is bio. So they work with biological things. In my case, biotechnology is studying the molecular mechanism that allow life and that how DNA, RNA, proteins function, and to try to use this information in order to get something that humans need, like new drugs or a cleaner world, or just discovery in the scientific environment. So I studied this, I love this so much, and then I started working on another field. So I changed slightly my field of work and I went to organic chemistry, in particular to medicinal chemistry, where the goal was to build molecules and to try to create new molecules, new drugs that could be active against some diseases. It was fascinating period of my life. I was doing my PhD in medicinal chemistry still in Milano, and I really loved it. But then I felt that I needed something more. So I left the academia and I went back to the origins. I went back to this, which is my school, the school where I studied, and I went back there as a teacher. I started teaching science, and after a few years, I moved to teaching anatomy and physiology and pathology and microbiology. So a lot of very interesting subjects, and I had a very great time with my students working in the lab, and also the pleasure to work in my very own school. Meantime, I discovered bioarchaeology. I will tell you how I did, and this gave me the possibility to participate to a lot of workshops, to a lot of excavations all around Europe, and also to get a very deep training in osteology and bioarchaeology, and to become a trainer myself. And then the last picture that I chose to tell who I am is this one. It's my homepage from my Instagram, where I love to do science communication. Now I am in a very dense period of my life where everything is happening, so I don't have a lot of time to publish a lot of content on my Instagram. But I started, I think, in 2017, 2018 to communicate some science. It's something that I've always perceived as something that coming from my how to say, from my nature. So my nature is to learn things and to communicate the things that I like, that I love. And science communication was a big discovery for me because I found a network of people here in Italy, but also in Europe and in the whole world, doing the same, that are passionate about science and they love to transmit their knowledge and to engage people in science. And I love to do this not just on my social media, but I also have the possibility to do it in person with the laboratory, participating to some real life event and so on. How did I get into osteology? It's Bones' fault. The Bones, the TV series. I started because of a friend that suggested me to watch this series because she was already fond of it, and I fell in love immediately. And the fun fact is that I actually didn't like the skeletal system of our body before. I thought that of all the systems, apparatuses of our body, the skeletal system was the, like the most boring one. But actually, through this series, I learned that bones can tell a lot of stories, and I fell in love with that. And on the other side, I put my real life bones, my real life anthropologist that had a crucial role in my formation for osteology and anthropology. It's Professor Cristina Catania. She's the scientific director of Labanov, the Laboratory of Anthropology and Forensic Odontology in Milano. She is basically the most famous and the most influential physical anthropologist in Italy. And she worked on so many forensic cases, and she's well known not just by the anthropological world, but also by many other people. Her job is not only forensic cases, but also she put a lot of effort during last years into the identification process of migrants that have deceased in the Mediterranean. So she put a lot of effort. She 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 built a community of people that are interested in social justice and to identify migrants that come from poor countries and they got disappeared into the Mediterranean. So my fiction bones and my real life bones, they had the greatest influence on my formation. When I attended the anthropology courses in the university by Cristina Cattaneo, I immediately fell in love with bones. And I realized that in a very peculiar way, because starting from the very night of the day we touched the bones for the first time, for a whole month, I started having dreams every night of a gigantic amount, a gigantic pile of bones. So I immediately felt that something had changed in me, and the new interest, a new flame was burning in my heart, and that was for anthropology and osteology. Then another great influence on my in my path towards anthropology is because it's due to Ostearc. It's an association that has the goal to do research, but also public outreach about osteoarchaeology with Dr. Alessandra Mazzucchi, which is represented here in the left picture. They organize courses. They organize a formation training for people who are interested in bones, especially in archaeological bones, and also they publish new research. Like they collaborate with a lot of projects with other public or private entities in order to create science. And they gave me the opportunity to study hands-on with the bones because they gave me a lot of bones that I could handle, I could study for a long period of time. Many of them were fragmented bones, and I learned so much from having the bones in my hand and also facing the difficulties of working with fragmented commingled remains. So I'm really grateful to Ostiarka for what I've learned and for what I could teach, because after a while, because I already had some osteology knowledge, I started teaching thanks to Ostiarka about bones. And so I brought the bones into my school. I brought the bones into several other schools, and I organized the courses with the students, like starting from the simulated excavation, the mock excavation, to working with actual human remains that came from archaeological excavations, and that the students had the possibility to wash, to repair, to treat, and to study in order to gain knowledge about the human skeleton, about archaeology, but also the importance and the value of archaeological goods and material culture. And this was also an occasion to try to teach students the scientific method and how we approach the study of bones or other artifacts from archaeological context, sharing the value of these goods, these things, and also inspiring them for future choices, because many of these students were so inspired that they decided to start a career in a scientific environment, or maybe even in archaeology. And they gave surprising results, because me and my colleague, who is an archaeologist, is Vera, she also a teacher from my school. We were so fascinated by the results and the effort that the students put into their work as a junior anthropologist. And also this kind of work that I did with Ostiarch was also a way to help research, because thanks to the many hands of the students, we washed a huge amount of bones that would have required a lot of time if we were to wash ourselves. So the students provided a lot of work while they were learning, and so a lot of bones have been washed, a lot of human remains that are now available for study and are now available for further research. And this was a very nice occasion that Ostiarka had to collaborate with the different schools. Also, it was very, very nice for all of us. We loved it. And then comes Aita. I met Natasha from Aita in 2019, just before the beginning of Aita itself, and we immediately get along very well. I was a student of Natasha at first in one of her field school in Spain, and then I came back the next year in 2021 after the pandemics. I came back to the same field school to participate again, and Natasha saw something in me. Probably we were getting along quite good, and so she started to involve me into some of her projects with Aita Bioarch, and this gave me the possibility to participate to a lot of excavation and a lot of field school with Aita's students. And so what I found in Aita is more than just bones. It's a great friendship with Natasha, and the possibility to dig, the possibility to do research, to publish scientific content together, and to make plans for the future, like the one I'm gonna tell about you. And we are all part of a big family, because it's not just me and Natasha, but a lot of of other people that some of them are also here in this meeting, participate with their expertise into Aita Bioarch. And so maybe if you participated to other webinars, or if you look for the webinars on YouTube, you will find some of these faces that will be familiar to you, because they also gave webinar for Aita Bioarch, or they will give the webinars during this 2025 season. And so it's nice to be part of a community, of an environment of different expertise, different people with different backgrounds. And this is really helpful, not just for scientific production, but also to grow as a person. With Aita, we had the possibility to organize a very nice field school in amazing places. And so I started collaborating with Aita as a osteologist on site. And also we recorded a very long course, the basic course in bioarchaeology. Maybe some of you already found this course and already attended this course online. And for the others, there will be another edition of this course in the next future. So stay tuned, stay connected, because Aita has some surprises for you again. And these are the places where I had the possibility to dig. So I started with my very first dig in Italy, the red one. But it was only for one day, but I immediately understood that this was something that I like. And then I traveled to different countries. And in 2025, like literally starting from next week, we will be digging in Serbia, the one marked in green with the asterisk. And then at the beginning of August, we will have another field school in Italy, very close to my birthplace. And I'm so happy to be back in my country with our first excavation in our first field school in Italy. So I'm very excited for the 2025 program. And if you stay tuned, you stay connected with our social media, of course, you will see a lot of pictures, videos, and stories that we're gonna tell about these sites that where we're gonna excavate. And then finally, after all these years of experience in osteology and anthropology, I decided to go back to school. So I came to Barcelona, where I am right now, and I enrolled into the master in biological anthropology at the Universitat de Barcelona in collaboration with the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. Here I'm doing my thesis in histology, so I'm working mostly with microscopy, and I'm studying the human bone in case of perimortem fracture. So I'm back to one of my first love, microscopy, but applied to forensic anthropology. So let's talk a little bit about science communication. Science communication can have many different forms, can have many different ways of happening. It can be writing paper, writing articles, recording videos for YouTube, doing webinars like the one that we are doing right now. But also in my case, mostly significates two things. Live event, like the one that you can see here on the left, it's me participating to a science festival, and on the right, one post from my Instagram feed. These are the two main activities that I do in science communication. So I participate in live events, and in terms of osteology, anthropology, most of them are laboratories that I give to the school or with some museums in order to teach other people osteology, anthropology, and to also convey the importance of human remains in reconstructing the past. And my Instagram, where I do lots of stuff, like different stuff. I don't have like a very precise scheme or a feed or objective in my Instagram, but I do things because I like. I do things because I have something that I want to communicate, and I have interest in doing it the way that I like. Like in the example that you have here, I also made some silly songs about science. So I was exploring new ways to communicate science, and I thought that music and song parodies was a way that I could have done that. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the theory of science communication. There are many ways that we can call science communication. So science communication is one of that. There is also what is called the third mission of university, that is the mission to communicate and to engage public with the activities of universities, because the other two missions, of course, are teaching and research. And then there is also another way to call it, which is science outreach. There is a public awareness of science, like increasing the awareness that people have in science and the scientific world, and how science is created, how it works. with also these other two nasty names that they gave them, which is past and pest. These are not very, very nice names, but they mean public. I forgot it. Just 1 second. Um, One is public engagement in science and technology, and the other one I forgot. I put it like 10 minutes ago, and of course it's out of my mind at the moment. So these are ways in which science communication can be called. It's a way to involve people into science, to increase their awareness, to engage them. Another way to call it is science popularization, but there are also some forms of science communication that are more similar to entertainment, and so that's why they invented the term edutainment, which is entertaining people, but at the same time with a educational or with a informational objective. So there are many ways to call it, and not all of them are the same with the others. But on the right, I put one picture that represents one of the biggest problems that can be found into science communication. In particular, it's typical of the third mission of university. It's one of the biggest defects of the third mission as it was born, and now it's, of course, it's evolving, and it's the ivory tower model. So this beautiful illustration represents an ivory tower with a scientist on top, and the scientist is giving away part of its knowledge to the people. So this was the scheme, this was the framework that science communication used at the beginning. It's something that now has evolved. Now science communication, science popularization is trying to go away from this model, which is the information deficit model, and it's going toward other frameworks, other paradigms of science communication, because of course this representation uh, says that the scientist is the only person which detains knowledge, which is empowered with knowledge, and the poor people just have to receive knowledge. So there, another way to see the information deficit model is to look at people like empty vessels, and you, the scientist who has science, or the science communicator, just go and fill this empty, pouring some of your knowledge. This deficit model is old now, and we are trying to get as far as possible from this deficit model because it's a little bit ingenuous. People are not empty vessels. uh, Also, it contains like some kind of judgment, but besides that, people are not empty vessels. People already have some knowledge. It's called like ingenuous knowledge. It's a layman knowledge, but in some way they have already a knowledge. So what you are gonna give them is not just the information that you can pour into these empty vessels. It's more like a dialogue that you create with people. And so these are two other models. One is called the dialogue model, and one is called the participation model. The dialogue model aims to create spaces for conversation between scientists and non-scientists. So creating points of contact where scientists can actually meet the public, and they can exchange their ideas, and they can influence each other. It's not just scientists talking to the public, giving lectures to the public, but also, or hopefully, also learning from the public, listening to the public. And this is even more so in the participation model. The participation model is the inclusion of non-scientists in the process of science. The first thing that comes to my mind when I talk about the participation model is citizen science. So as it's represented in the picture, citizens that actually help the scientist by providing their hands, literally by providing their presence in order to sustain, to help science. And one example of this is the use of citizens, the use of lay people in surveys, for example, like biological surveys, going into the field and record, I don't know, every insect or every plant that you have in a area. Okay, this is a way that citizen can actually help scientists by doing a part of the research with them. But another way to see the participation model and this inclusion of non-scientists into the process of science is also to include people into the decision making of science. So to ask people what they want from science, what they accept from science, what should be the goal, what should be the objectives that scientists are going to follow in the research. Because it's people who provide money for scientists. It's the society that pays science, that pays research, is people. And so why not involving people? Why not including people into the decision making itself? So this is another paradigm. And as you can see, the role of people, the role of the public in this paradigm, in this model, is way further from the ivory tower model. So this is more or less how the communication of science has evolved. So now it's a more like a dialogue. It's more like an active participation of people into science and not just seeing as someone from the top teaching to empty vessels at the bottom. Also, there is the question of what science are we going to communicate? Because there are hard sciences like maths, physics, I don't know, astronomy, maybe somehow chemistry, but there are soft sciences too, like biology, medicine, okay, if we can consider it science. And those are very different sciences and they require different ways of communication. Also, there are human sciences, the human studies, like social anthropology or sociology or politics and so on. This is part of another kind of science. And then probably you have noticed on if you use social media on your Instagram, on YouTube, there are so many profiles now that talk about other forms of knowledge, like they talk about music, like the history of music, how to get better at understanding music and how to appreciate music or art, painting, sculpture. So there are so many science communicators that not just talk about science like chemistry or physics or biology. Science today can be seen as a wider environment, and there are so many science communicators that touch all of these aspects in our Instagram, in our YouTube, in our contents that we use. So maybe we should talk about cultural communication more than science communication, because we are actually discussing of almost every form of knowledge that we have in our culture. There are some differences that I pointed out here about the goal that we can have when we do science communication. We can do science communication because we just want to inform people, or we want to popularize something, or we want to influence people. So maybe it's not the correct terms. Maybe I could have called it in different ways, but if you follow me in the reasoning, probably what I want to say will become clear. So there is an information goal that is the most neutral. So you just want to convey, to transmit some data or some news, like informing people about something. And this is the most neutral way to communicate. Then there is popularization or science communication, the form that I like it the most, which means making some content accessible and interesting to a wider public, to a public especially of non-experts. So this kind of science communication is more or less like a translation from the difficult language that science uses, which is very technical, very specific to one particular field. It uses a jargon, like a way of speaking that is sometimes not understandable by most of the people that are not from this field. And it translates into a different language that is accessible to a wider public. It can include providing some context about the news. So not just the news itself, but building around it some environment, some context in order to make it more understandable or easier to process. It includes some narration. Sometimes science can be narrated like if it was a story, and this is the part that engages people the most. It includes giving practical examples or using metaphors in order to communicate science. But what I like the most is that some very good science communicator not just convey or translate their science to the public, but they provide to their followers, to their public, with methods and tools that you can use to empower yourself and to understand the scientific world better. So if I learn something about the scientific methods, if I learn how science works, if I have some tools in order to discriminate between fake news and real stuff, then I am empowered because now I have the power to take better decision, to discover if someone is messing up with me, if I've been told something wrong, and how can I get access to the actual sources of a trustworthy source of information. Another objective that we can have in science communication is to influence people. So to induce a change. It could be a change of opinion. It could be a change of behavior. It could be raising awareness about something. And this is a wide spectrum. It can go from influencer marketing, like literally I'm trying to influence you into buying something. That's totally acceptable. It's a job nowadays, either you like it or not. On the other side, it can go towards advocacy or activism. So I wanted to influence people, I don't know, about climate change, about the importance to I don't know, to reduce fossil fuel usage and so on. So these are ways in which you can use science as a tool, and the narration of science as a tool to influence people and to obtain something that you want. Uh, Mostly it's something related to a bigger good, let's say, like in advocacy and activism for environment, but sometimes it's just obtaining something that you want in terms of economic behavior. So if you're also interested in public in becoming a public communicator of science, maybe you should ask yourself, what are my objectives? What are my goals with my communication? What do I want to achieve? I just want to convey some information, very neutral, very like giving you some news, and it's also nice. I mean, I follow some profile that basically communicate news about the world of archaeology, the world of bioanthropology, and it's nice, and I like it. Or do you want to become a translator from the scientific world to the world of non-expert? Or you want to influence people, you want to change their lives, their opinions, their behavior, or to raise some awareness. So if you want to make some science communication, the first thing is to understand what you really want. Then these are some random ideas that I put down, that are some hints and suggestions I can give to people that are interested in doing some science communication. Thinking about your target, like now that I know what I want to achieve, who is my target? Who am I gonna talk to? Am I gonna talk to students? Am I gonna talk to grown-up people? Am I gonna talk to a small category of people which is interested in this niche topic? So who is my target? What do they already know? What they don't know? How heterogeneous is the target that I'm talking to? And then choose a format. This means choosing a platform where to do your science communication. Either if you want to write in form of a blog, or to make a video for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, like the different social media. Now we have so many tools that we can use for communicating with other people, from WhatsApp to Twitter and so on. And everything could be good for talking to people. Wherever there is people, this is where you can go and talk. But different platforms means different formats. So you have to adapt it to the platform. This can be very frustrating at the beginning because you don't know how the platform actually works, because there are these hidden algorithms that work behind the curtains, and they decide who is going to see your content, who is not going to see your content. And so working with a different platform or arriving on a new platform that you didn't explore earlier can be sometimes frustrating because you put a lot of effort and at the beginning it doesn't pay back. So choosing a format, choosing the best way to communicate according to that platform is crucial. And once you have chosen, you start working on your content. This means adapting your content. So based on who is your target, based on the type of communication, the type of format that you chose, this means adapting your content. If I'm doing short videos for YouTube Shorts or a TikTok video or Instagram Reels, which are 1.5 minutes long mostly, okay, I cannot talk about a lot of stuff. I cannot introduce a topic with a 3 minute introduction because I don't have this time. Also, the attention span of people is reduced and reduced and reduced. So if you want to communicate, sometimes you have to use some other strategies, like using a hook at the beginning in order to hook to capture the attention of your viewer, and then to start talking about the topic. Or maybe you can just decide that I don't want to use this kind of hooks. I don't want to use this kind of format that this platform is kind of imposing to me. And I will just do what I like in the way that I like. This is a totally understandable choice, but you know that you're going against the stream, against the algorithm. So of course you will be a little bit penalized by the algorithm because you're not following the rules, but at least you can do what you like in the way that you like. Adapting the content also means deciding what to tell and what not to tell, because when you communicate science, you have to filter the information. Like not everything is important to be communicated at this moment. You have to give some background, you have to create some context, but you don't want to expand it too much in this direction because you don't have the time and the possibility. And so you have to carefully select what to say and also select how to say it, adapt your language. So based on who is your target that you want to reach, the people that you want to talk to, then it means adapt the language. It means reducing some complicated ways that scientists use to convey information into a everyday language that everybody can understand. And be be aware that this kind of language translation is not easy. It requires a lot of skill, a lot of how to say, a lot of practice, but also it's not subtracting anything from the value of research. So just because you change your language, just because you adapt your language, just because you are kind of lowering the language to make it accessible to the wider public, it doesn't mean that you have to lower the value of the science that you're communicating, or the actual thing that you're going to communicate doesn't lose any value. It's just making it more accessible. So if this would be understood also by scientists when trying to communicate, this would be a great thing, because you can communicate the same identical concepts in a easier way, and this doesn't take away anything from what you're communicating. You're just making it more accessible, more inclusive. Other two suggestions that I can give when dealing with science communication, and especially with social media, is to avoid clickbait if possible. As I said before, sometimes it's necessary to have some kind of hook in order to capture the attention of people. But in our society, in the world that we have created in the recent years online, you you know that there is a lot of clickbaiting, and most of the newspaper articles that we see online start with a clickbait, like the 10 things that will kill you silently, or 5 foods that you should avoid because you're gonna die, or why aliens built the pyramids. I don't know. So it's so easy to get into clickbait that it's quite difficult on the opposite side to find some serious newspaper that work in a serious way without clickbaiting. So putting a title that actually describes the news that they are providing, and without forcing people to clickbait because they want to know what is communicated in this paper. So using a hook, using something to attract the attention, but without going into the clickbait zone, because this is not the way we want to communicate. This is not the kind of science communication that we really want to give to the world. On the other side, beware of the big pile of shit. This is a metaphor that has been invented a few years ago by a IT technologist, and it's also called the bullshit asymmetry principle. So building a gigantic pile of bullshit online, especially, is so easy, and trying to dismantle this gigantic pile, trying to remove it, it's very hard. So it's so easy to create confusion. It's so easy to spread misinformation. It's so easy to spread fake news, and it's so difficult to work against it. And at the end of the work, not only you're tired, but you also smell bad. So the big pile of shit is a warning that I'm giving you, that it's very asymmetric. So if you try to work against fake news, like debunking news and so on, be aware that you will spend hours just to debunk one single sentence, one single piece of misinformation that was given by the others. There are some profiles, some channels online that specialized in debunking and specialized in dismantling this gigantic pile of shit. But be aware that it's a job that never ends, and it's very frustrating because you dismantle a piece little by little, and another big pile of shit tomorrow comes bigger than the previous one. So inventing fake news is so easy, and proving them wrong, it's very difficult. So if you don't want to get lost into this kind of situation, think about avoiding this kind of communication, like the banking of fake news, because it can be catchy, it can be interesting, it can be helpful, but also on the other side, it's frustrating because they will always win against us. Also, it's a tough job because more and more people are treating science communication badly. Not only what you do is generally unpaid science communication, but in most cases, you will also, if it's a success, especially if it's successful what you're doing, you will find other people copying or stealing your content online. This aspect of science communication and the toughness of the job has been very well described by two posts from two Instagram profile that I follow. They talk about cosmetics and cosmetic chemistry and safety. One is the Eco Well, and the other one is Lab Muffin Beauty Science. They're on Instagram. I really suggest you to follow them. They're English speaking profile. Their main topic is about cosmetics, but they also do a lot of science communication in the way that I said before, like providing the tools, providing the methods to understand what's real and what's fake, how to get to the sources, how to learn to defend ourselves from bullshit. And in this series of two posts on their profile, they are basically complaining on how independent science communication is unsustainable, because there is so much work that you have to do, so much effort that you have to put in order to do a good data-based science communication. And it's so easy to ruin everything when they steal it, or when they copy from you, or when they use this data but in a bad way. So I suggest you have a look at these Instagram profiles, and you will find this post that I reported here. It's divided in two parts, and it's very interesting if you want to start your career in science communication. For me, science communication, especially in bioarchaeology, also means sharing my story. So sharing what I'm doing, the things that I'm liking. And these are two examples from our field school in Croatia a few years ago. It was 2022. Like how the site looked before and after the excavation. some precious memories from this excavation. So telling stories is one of the way that I chose to talk about science, because the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm participating in, are so engaging for me. I'm so happy to be there that I actually wanted to talk about it and to bring other people into the field with me. So sometimes it's just this. It's sometimes it just come with me. I will take you on a journey. I will take you on a day on the archaeological site with me, or in the lab with what I'm doing, with what I'm studying. Of course, in this kind of video, you cannot provide a lot of information. Yeah, you can write something maybe in the caption, but nobody reads that. So this is only one way that you can communicate science, by narrating, by telling a story of what you're doing in this moment. Of course, there can be other ways to communicate where you actually focus on one small detail and you tell a story about this detail. You give some actual scientific information about this. Science communication also opened me a lot of doors. Not only it put me in contact with Aita Bioarch, with Natasha, but also open in front of me a huge network of people that are working in the same field, that are passionate about the same things. And then I had the possibility to actually meet those people. So this was a post from a few years ago where I listed some of my favorite archaeological profile on Instagram. You can see Gino Caspari, the Wandering Archaeologist, Aita Bioarch, of course, the FAPAB Research Center, and the Vintage Anthropologist. And I'm very happy that in some cases, the people that I got to know through Instagram, through social media, also entered my life in person, like in real life. And this is the case with Gino Caspari or with Emma from The Wandering Archaeologist. They do wonderful science communication. Their Instagram profile is so great. Gino is a Swiss archaeologist and it's a very adventurous man, and you can follow his adventures, and now a documentary that he just published in his Instagram. And he also documented through Instagram a wonderful excavation that they did in Russia, with amazing graves, with the grave goods, beautiful skeletons. And so it's very interesting. It's one of the profiles that I really suggest you to follow. And also he's the author of one book about mummies. So if you're interested in mummies, also Gino Caspari has a book about mummies that is very, very nice. And chapter by chapter, it talks about the different expertise that are required for studying bioarchaeology. And then there is Emma, the Wandering Archaeologist. She's leading an amazing excavation in Roncesvalles in the north of Spain, where I had the possibility to participate. And her expertise is in commingled human remains. And she also has a very aesthetic, very beautiful Instagram profile. Last slide, and then I will leave you the word for some comments or some questions. The last slide, I decided to leave it for ethics in the communication of archaeology. It's a very complicated topic. We can talk about this probably for hours. I just decided to put two references in this slide, because probably if I asked any of you to give your opinion about the ethics in communication of bioarchaeology, the ethics of using pictures of human remains and so on, and how should we do that, if we should put a trigger warning, if we should not put a trigger warning, if it's totally okay to publish archaeological skeletons, or if it has to be completely avoided. Probably each person of you will give me a different answer, because it's something that really depends on the person itself, from the background, the beliefs of this person, the culture in which this person grew, and there are so many things that have been written and said about the ethics in bioarchaeology communication. I just decided to put a couple of them. One is this YouTube profile, this YouTube channel, which is called the Bioant Talks. And they, in 2021, they organized a whole scientific conference online about ethics in the communication of bioarchaeology. So if you're interested, you can go there on their YouTube, and you will find a lot of videos with all the interventions of different scientists, different anthropologists that share their opinion and some kind of guidelines for communicating bioarchaeology through the use of human remains images. On the right, I put a different kind of document. In this case, it's like a paper document, because in 2019, in autumn 2019, the Museo Egizio, the Egyptian Museum in Torino, Italy, organized a conference about human remains, ethic, conservation, and display. From this conference, the proceeding of the conference came out in form of a book, and so now you can access the book that collects all the contributions of the different authors that took part in this conference. Of course, this conference was organized by the Egyptian Museum because they had this problem in the first person. Like, they have mummies, they have human remains, so they are the biggest Egyptian museum outside Egypt. And so they had this problem, like, how are we gonna communicate? How are we gonna present, display the human remains and the mummies that are, of course, like one of the biggest attraction of an Egyptian museum, but in a world that is changing, a world that is multicultural, a world where not everyone has the same background as the one that we have. So they decided to implement some changes in the way they're displaying their human remains in the museum itself, and they organized in 2019 this entrance conference. And so probably if you're interested into digging more about in the topic of bioethics, you can have a look at these two things. One is a video, one is like a formal document, a book. And that's it for today. So this was my very short panoramic about communication of science. It's mostly based on my personal experience and my how I became involved into bioarchaeology. Of course, as I said, I was not aiming to teach you anything. Probably it's something that you already knew in advance. But if I don't know, inspired or gave you some ideas, or if I elicit some comments from you, you can feel free now to share your comments and share your question, and I will be here listening and taking notes.
Thank you so much, Roberto.